Hello everybody, this is Graeme Anderson, and today I'm going to be looking at Dungeonology. This is a fantastic looking game about being a scholar and going out into the wilds and try and write your thesis on an ancient civilization. Of course, you have regular students to help you out, but the Omega fraternity students cause havoc wherever they go. Plus, it doesn't help that your fellow scholars are also trying to prepare their thesis on the same civilization. Now this game is a bit of a dungeon crawler mixed with card play, mixed with some resource collection, and a fair bit of take that. If you put all those pieces into a bag and mix it all up, you'll get the gameplay for Dungeonology. So it's not easy to pigeonhole. But does that make it a good game? Let's get it to the table, see how it's played, and we'll come back for my final thoughts on Dungeonology. Here is Dungeonology set up for 3 players. I'm going to be going over this game at a high level and skipping over some of the finer details as there are a fair number of small rules in this game. Now each player is given a noteboard and randomly takes a scholar card. This is put on the noteboard and will show you the different stats that the character has. You will take as many students as it shows on your scholar card. Use the randomizer deck to determine the first player by pulling a card and looking at the color of the diamond and matching it to the player board diamond. The first player will be dealt 1 trick card, the second player gets 2 trick cards, etc. Place the campus board to one side and randomly draw a panic card and place it face down without looking at it. Then, place an alert card on top of that. Then, randomly draw 1 clan card and place it face down. I'll explain a bit more about these cards when they come up during gameplay. Separate the intern deck, jinx deck, and the randomizer deck. Next, pick a boss. And in the base game, there's just one, so you're just going to pick a side of which boss you want to play, which, along with the alert card, will be set the difficulty of the game. Place the starting zone and all the player meeples on that starting zone. Separate the 3 decks of zone tiles based on their backs. Then, place as many ordinary students and Omega fraternity students as it says on the alert card. Then you're going to be ready to play. The goal of the game is to collect information cubes which will be present on the zone tiles, which are revealed when you explore. The zone tiles may also have some effects when you enter them, but by taking the study action on a zone tile, you can acquire the information cubes. When you feel you have enough information, you can present your thesis to the dean of the school. You look at the clan card and score your points. Now let's have a quick look at the clan card. You'll have a number to beat on the top left-hand corner, and it will also show you any modifiers for the different colored cubes. I'll come back to this card more when I talk about presenting your thesis and ending the game. Of course, things are not as easy when you're out researching lost civilizations. There's an angry local about, which is the boss, and of course your fellow scholars will try and sabotage you and steal your information. Now this game is played until one player decides to present their thesis, or you go into maximum alert mode, then all other players have to quickly finish up what they're doing and try and present their thesis as well. One of the main components of this game is the trick cards, so let's have a look at them now. But they all contain basically the same type of information. You've got the bonus number, which will be used for studying or stealing information cubes. Then you've got the name, then the timing as to when you can use the main action of the card, and that's going to be either instant, which is the lightning bolt, a reaction to another card being played, which is a red lightning bolt, and either one of these cards you can play anytime, or nothing at all, which means it can only be played on your turn during the movement or the action step. The middle part of the card will show you the main effect of the card. If there is the word action, it means this action will take up your action phase during your turn. The details on the card is outlined in the book, and I'm not going to go into it here, just know that this is the main action. Across the bottom of the card are the auxiliary effects of the card. Again, these are all outlined in the book. The most important thing to remember about these cards is that each card can only be played for one section, either the top section for the points, or the main section for its action, or one of the auxiliary actions. Whenever any one of these sections is actioned, the card is discarded. Before I get into the main gameplay, I want to quickly talk about the students, since they are usually pulled from doing an action on a card. The bag is seated with a number of regular students and Omega students. When you're required to pull students, you will draw that many from the bag. Any normal students will be placed around the campfire. And if the card allows you to gain students, you're going to gain them from here. If you pull an Omega student though, they act like a timer in the game. You place them on the alert card, which can affect different actions during the game, and every time you pull one out, you discard all the students around the campfire and reseed the bag again based on the alert card. The player who pulled the Omega student will also receive a Jinx card, which will have some sort of negative effect on the player. If all the slots are full on the alert card, you will trigger the maximum alert card, and this game will go into the final stages. So let's have a look at what you can do on your turn. If you want to submit your thesis, it is the only thing you're going to be doing on your turn, and I'll discuss this later. If you need or want to rest, then you'll return your scholar back to the starting zone, remove all of your stun tokens, discard one Jinx card, and discard any number of trick cards from your hand and draw back up to your maximum. And then you're going to draw students back up to your maximum and finally end your turn. If you neither submitted your thesis or rested, then you can move and do an action. It is only during the move and action phases that you can normally play the regular trick cards. To move, you can move up to your maximum movement on your noteboard. When you move into an unexplored area, you'll draw a tile from the level you are on and add it to the map. Then you must match an exit, and all tiles must be played the same way up. Let's have a quick look at a tile. At the bottom of the tile will be slots for the information cubes. When you first revealed, you'll fill them up with the appropriate color cubes. There's an alert level on this space, and I'll talk more about that during the study action. There are also icons across the top, which will affect the scholars on the tile. They could be such things as stairs down to another level, a good or bad luck tile which will affect your ability to study, maybe a toll, or an ambush where you have to drop students. Each time a scholar enters these tiles, these effects will take place from left to right. And lastly, there are different exits. Some of them may be blocked by a door, but if you have an information cube of that color on your noteboard, you can pass through the door no problem. One of the most important icons is the boss icon on a tile. Each game will have a boss that is wandering the board. The card you randomly select at the beginning of the game will detail what happens when a boss is activated by a scholar entering a tile with that boss icon on it, and you're just going to follow the instructions. During a player's turn, they can also do one action, which is study to try and collect information cubes from the tile they are on, espionage to try and steal cubes from another scholar on the same tile and an adjacent link tile, that is, tiles that are on the same level that share an exit. You can play a trick card for its action, or finally you can activate a tile special action. The study action is one of the main ways to get cubes. The base value you'll have to get is the alert value on the tile, plus any modifiers from the boss or the alert card. You always take cubes from left to right, and you can claim more than one cube, and you can take up to the limit as defined by your character. Each additional cube will increase the stealth value you have to get or exceed. So to take 3 cubes, you would have to add an additional 3 points to the alert value printed on the board. Then, the scholar discards cards for their bonus value, that is, the value in the top left of the card. Then, each player in player order can play trick cards for instant auxiliary effects. Now only Subterfuge, Fate, or Magic cards will have an auxiliary action that can be played at this time. After all opponents have played cards and action the cards to modify the alert value, the original scholar can play trick cards for their auxiliary actions. Again, only Subterfuge, Fate, and Magic cards can be played to boost their stealth value. At this point, if the scholar has the same or more stealth than the room's alert value, they will collect the desired cubes. If the scholar fails, they will take a stun and draw a student from the bag. All cards that were played are discarded. The espionage action works pretty much the same way as the study action, but instead of taking the cubes from the tile, you're trying to steal them from another scholar, and the alert value depends on the type of cube you're trying to steal. The stealing scholar will play cards for their bonus value. Then, the scholar who is trying to protect their cubes can play cards for their auxiliary effects. Again, only Subterfuge, Fate, or Magic cards. Then the stealing scholar can play the same type of cards, and this will continue until both scholars have finished playing all the cards. If the stealing scholar's stealth value is equal or exceeds the alert value of the other student, they will steal an information cube. If not, the stealing scholar takes a stun marker and draws a student. Another one of the actions you can do on your turn is just play a card from your hand for its action, and the card will tell you what you can do. The final action is to do a tile action, or a zone action. These are usually things like bivouac, that is the rest action without having to go back to the start zone, or use the teleport action to move to any revealed tile. You end your turn by turning over any Jinx cards that you've got face up and apply their effects, then draw trick cards back up to your hand size. So let's quickly talk about turning in your thesis. During the game, each character has a requirement on their card that shows which information cubes they need to have before they can look at the clan card. You do not need to do this before you submit your thesis, but it may be useful. You also need to have 2 stars in your notebook, and I should say that if a player has fewer stars than you do, they get to turn their player card over to give them more special abilities. And if a player ever has the same number of stars as the person who has the most stars, they'll make sure that their scholar is on the normal side. Anyway, back to the thesis. The only thing you're going to do on your turn is to move to the starting zone. Then you will secretly look at the clan card and calculate your score. That is, you're going to add up the lowest number in each column that is visible and add in any modifiers from the clan card, students, interns, Jinx cards, or any other sources. If you meet or exceed the points in the top left-hand corner, you are successful, but do not reveal your score to the other players. The game goes directly into maximum alert, and the other players will continue to play until they also submit their thesis or they cannot submit their thesis. If you do not meet the required points, then you take a Jinx card and remove your highest information cube and end your turn. The game will end when either a scholar submits a successful thesis or an Omega student reaches the panic card. This will trigger Maximum Alert. During Maximum Alert, you must end your turn in the starting zone and submit your thesis there, not at the beginning of your turn like you would normally do. Furthermore, you cannot perform a rest, you cannot place any more tiles, nor place any new information cubes on tiles. And the game is going to proceed for as long as possible following the directions on the panic card. Once all scholars have submitted their thesis or cannot continue the game, you go into final scoring. Each player will then calculate their scores as normal, but the first scholar to submit their thesis gets an additional 10 points, the second will get 7 points, third gets 5 points, and fourth gets 3 bonus points. The player with the most points is the winner. Again, this was a very brief overview just to give you an idea of how the game plays, but I've skipped over or simplified a lot of the rules. Let's get back to see what I thought about Dungeonology.
Let's first talk about theme and components. I really enjoyed the theme. Going around to find the information on the clans was an interesting idea. Unfortunately, it really doesn't translate to the actions you're doing. There seems to be no connection to what you're doing to the main theme of the game. So even though I liked the idea, it was unfortunate that it really didn't carry over to the gameplay beyond the idea of exploring different areas of the map. So let's get on to the components. And oh my goodness, did they not scrimp on this. These are some fantastic components. There is nothing they seem to scrimp on for this game. Now, I really enjoyed the art, everywhere, from the back of the cards to the front of the cards. All the components were just a high quality of art. The cardboard zone tiles have nice recessed areas for the cubes, and even the note boards that hold your scholar cards are very nice. The minis, I don't know if you can see this, but the minis on these guys are just kind of top notch. The other thing I enjoyed or appreciated was that the art really didn't get in the way of the gameplay. It was easy enough to tell what the icons were in the zone, where the exits were, or how to read a card. The only downside could be the iconography. It's not 100% intuitive, but you know what? Luckily, they give you another gorgeous player aid, which explains all the icons on the cards. Now, the rulebook was maybe one of the sticking points for me when it comes to components. Although there is a table of contents at the beginning of the book, it was not always easy to find the answers. For example, the students are referenced, I think, at least 3 or 4 times in different areas in the book. So if you had a question maybe what gain versus sacrifice a student meant, then it's really not a clear area to go to. Or even better, what happens when you pull an Omega student from the bag? There are 2 sections in the rulebook that cover it. And the first one really doesn't go into full detail on what you do. It kind of gives you 90%. So you have to find the full procedure later on in the book that kind of lists, step 1, step 2, step 3. Now, I will give this rulebook some leeway because the game is not as straightforward to teach as I was expecting. The basic concept is, but there are a fair number of smaller rules that make it slightly more complicated than I feel it needed to be, as you saw from my walkthrough. So let's talk about the gameplay. For me, it was a mixed bag. The first time I played it, there was an awful lot of going back to the rulebook to find out how to do something. I think just about every time I've played since then, I've had to explain that study card mechanism a few times, as it doesn't really feel straightforward, as only some cards can be played to jack up the alert and stealth value, and which ones are they? Well, not all the ones with a lightning bolt can, anyway. Plus you have to remember all the different aspects of the alert and stealth value. I mean the room's base value, plus the alert card modifiers, plus the zone's effects. Is there a boss in the room? How many information cubes you want to pick up? It's a lot to remember. Again, it's nothing overly complex, it's just the stuff that you have to remember. So that means that there is a learning curve to the game. But the game itself feels like it should be straightforward. Explore the map, collect information cubes from either the students or from the zones. Then submit your thesis. It should be a straightforward game, but there seems to be an awful lot of more rules around it, basically to make it more interesting than just that. But here comes some of my issues with the games. It feels like a trailer or a demo version of a game. Almost every game I've played, we've gone through all the tiles, and there's only 6 per level and only 3 levels. Once you understand the boss, and there's only 2 sides to him, you can kind of anticipate what he's going to do, up to a point and plan your game accordingly. And I feel like I've kind of done everything in the game. I had fun for the first game or 2, but then it started to feel like it was the same thing over and over again. Race down to the lower levels to get the higher point cubes, then run back. Yes, of course, there's more to it, and if your group really enjoys the take that element or the interactivity of games, then I think you're really going to enjoy this for a couple of plays. You really need to get into that take that aspect of the game, but that is countered by your own desire to collect cubes. You do not draw cards back up until the end of your turn, so if you use them all up stopping other people from getting cubes, then when it's your turn, you don't have any cards to do anything with. Now, it's an interesting decision to be made during the game, but I kind of felt that that was one of the few decisions I had. The espionage action of stealing a cube from another player really doesn't feel as needed or as fruitful as the study action. Now definitely sometimes it's necessary, but you seem to waste a bunch of cards for a single cube. If you want to steal a cube from someone, let's say the purple cube, and they have 1 or 2 students, so the purple cube has a base value of 6 to steal, and each student increases the alert value. So let's say it's 8. So you have to have at least 9 stealth in your hand. Or honestly, you can just go deeper in the dungeon and for the same alert value, you can probably pick up 2 or 3 cubes. So the espionage action is definitely necessary sometimes to stop other people being able to present their thesis or get some points off of them. But it really didn't feel as useful as kind of the rest of, especially the study action. So let's say your group is not that into the take that element of the game. Then you really lose the urgency of the game. If no one is playing cards to draw students out of that bag, the timer never clicks down by drawing those Omega students. And without that, the tension of the game is gone. So everybody needs to be doing the same thing, collecting cubes. And if you want the higher important cubes, you need to be going down to the dungeon. So everyone is just kind of looking for the stairs and proceeds down. There's really no point to do anything else. Yes, you can probably get a few cubes from the upper levels or maybe lay traps for the other students. But that's about it. There's no kind of alternate path to victory. You need to be collecting cubes. And my hopefully last issue with the game, as I mentioned before, is the amount of content you get in the base box. Now, I know there are several expansions, and if you had kickstarted this game, you probably have gotten more than you could ever deal with, which definitely would fix this issue. But for the retail version, which I purchased, it feels like I just kind of got a taste to see whether you're interested in the full game. You know, kind of here, try this game, and if you like it, oh, by the way, here's all this other stuff you can buy. And it's not a cheap game. Now, I don't want to sound like I'd really dislike this game. The game was fine, and there is some fun to be had, but it kind of got repetitive fairly quickly. I think what it's trying to do actually does well. It comes down to if you want a dungeon crawler with a take that, and be prepared to need new content after 2 or 3 plays, as by that time you've kind of seen everything that game has to offer. Now, I did like the whole idea of collecting the cubes to submit your thesis. And when you went into that panic mode, you know, after the last Omega student came out or someone submitted their thesis, that game feels much more tense and exciting. It's just kind of unfortunate that it comes near the end of the game. Now, the alert cards and panic cards do switch up the game a little bit, but even the alert cards are just kind of variation on the same thing. Increase the alert value and reseed the bag. I would have loved to see more variation on what happens. Now, the panic cards do change up the gameplay, but again, there's only 3 panic cards that come with the base board. Also, the different scholars, they all had different abilities, and that was great. But again, there's only 4 in the box, and you'll see them in action fairly quickly. Now, some of them will change the way you approach the game. For example, if your scholar is better at espionage action, then you'll probably want to be doing that more. I would have liked to see more in the box, but I understand that that also would have meant to include more minis, which have increased the cost of the game. So, would I recommend this game? For myself, this game is a pass. My groups that I played with are not huge fans of Take That, and coupled with the fact that I didn't enjoy the base game enough to want to invest even more money to get the full version of the game, and this is a full price game, I feel that I would have a better experience if I bought more of it, but I really can't go by the gameplay that I got here. So I really can't recommend this game. But, and this is a big but, if your group really enjoys Take That elements of the game or very interactive games, you're going to probably really enjoy this. But be prepared to open up your wallet to get the expansions that I think this game really needed in the base box. But that's it for the moment. Until next time, thanks for watching.